The woman in this painting has a name. The ancient Greeks worshipped her as Hera, the queen of the gods, wife of the mighty Zeus. But in ancient Rome she was known as Juno, and her husband was the all-powerful Jupiter. But how do we know that she's a queen, and why is she standing at a house in Delft? Welcome back to Vermeer's Child, where in this episode we're going to put one of the final pieces into this puzzle. Vermeer loved women. There are 37 authenticated Vermeer paintings that have survived, and women appear in every one of them. Rich women, working women, women smiling and sleeping, girls in foreign costumes. He loved their clothes, their hair and their jewels, and even in his personal life he was surrounded by them. Of the 11 children who survived him when he died at the age of 43, 7 were female, and when you add in the other women in his household, his wife, his mother-in-law and their maid, it's apparent that he lived in the middle of a world of women. Just to refresh your memories of the earlier episodes where I suggested that the chair in this painting might be the magic chair created by Vulcan to entrap his mother Juno after she was so revolted by his appearance at birth that she kicked him off Mount Olympus. He tumbled down the mountain and became lame from his injuries. He was raised by oceanids to become the greatest artisan and craftsman the heavens and earth had ever known, a creator of thrones for his fellow gods, jewels and trinkets for their pleasure, and armour for their battles. When his mother, the Queen, received the gift of a beautiful handcrafted chair, she couldn't resist sitting on it. But when she did, it trapped her and she was held fast to it. And so Vulcan had his revenge, and not even Jupiter had the power to set her free. So let's dive in, and you're in for a real treat, because you're going to see the most incredible imagination at work and unparalleled technical ability. So my whole theory about this painting has been based on finding an empty throne, or what appears to be an empty throne in this painting on the wall, what appear to be temple shapes running up this wall, and then some of the features around the painting, and the strange depiction of things on this chair, and the idea that this might be something that closes on the side of it, and perhaps even something that closes on the other side of it to entrap this woman. If we can find no evidence when we look at this woman that she's the Queen of Heaven, Juno, and we can find no evidence that this boy represents Vulcan, then obviously the whole theory falls apart, and we've got just a whole lot of strange components. So what's the innocent thing that's going on in this doorway? Well, the woman's taking an apple that's been offered by the boy. Now, the apple in history paintings is quite often tied to temptation and to original sin, and it might also be distraction in this instance, because the woman's not thinking and she's going to take the apple from the boy and go and sit on this chair, and then of course she'll be stuck. But I think that original sin probably is the core issue here, because if she is Juno and the boy is Vulcan, then the original sin of the mother was to reject the boy and kill him at birth by kicking him off the mountain. But of course she didn't kill him, she didn't know that though. So that would be the sin that sits at the centre of this whole story. So what we're going to do now is take a ground up look at this woman and see whether we can work out what exactly is going on. And the thing that's particularly interesting, obviously, is why there's holes in this dress. Now, you don't actually notice these holes. It actually just looks like it's a bit patchy compared to other similar paintings. But see, the rest of it looks pretty much the same as other paintings. The boy's perhaps a little bit shabby, but this skirt looks really quite patchy, and doesn't seem to have the quality that you would expect to see, particularly from Vermeer. I mean, aspects of it do. The bits at the back here are pretty nice. This is fairly nice. And the pattern of shade and light on it is pretty much the same as the De Hoog painting. The apron's a bit odd as well. So that's what we're going to have a look at in this first part of this episode, the red skirt. So starting off with this image, the first thing you can notice is, let's have a look at this yellow line that's on the ground. It seems to go through a few little objects here, and it goes through the side of a dress. So you can see it going in there, and it appears to go round in a big loop. I can see going that way. I can see a little bit there, and you can see sort of a twisted rope, like a golden rope. So the woman's stepping into what looks to be a golden loop, or she's already stepped into it perhaps. It's a bit hard to say. Now you can see that there's green underpainting under here, and there's other things going on in the shadows, but the key thing is that's what this hole is for. So if we're standing back looking at this painting, normally we're just seeing something that looks quite typical. Perhaps the artist would have shown close acquaintances some of these features, but you certainly wouldn't notice them if you were just standing back looking at the painting. And I suspect that this skirt might have looked a bit less shabby in the past. There's actually a section there that someone's cleaned off, so that's the reason that that one is really quite strange there. But if you have a look at the back half of the skirt, it doesn't look too bad at all. So what else is happening on this? You can see an object on the floor there that we hadn't previously had a look at, and I still don't, well, I haven't noticed it before, so I don't know what it is. I suspect it might be something to do with this golden rope, perhaps because you can see that there's a chain or something that comes up here and intersects with it. So exactly what's going on there I'm not sure, but what we'll find is around the edge of this dress there are a whole lot of little anchors holding this woman's skirt in place. She's actually tied to the ground here. There's little things just on the edge, either with a cable running through them or little clamps that sit on the edge of the skirt, and they're just holding everything in place. You can I think you can pick up just a little bit of a chain there and an object on the ground here which is part of some sort of fixing. If you look very closely you can actually see where the chain coming from this object that's on the ground comes up, and there's some sort of a metal shape just where this yellow thing runs through, or this golden rod or whatever it is, and you can actually see all sorts of detail in there too. This thing has got detail all over it. There's something else there which has got quite a lot of detail. We looked at a little bit of this area under the boy's shoe, and you can see that those silver shapes that are starting to show through just there are actually connected right across to here. And I guess, even though we can't really make out what it is, you can quite clearly see that this is a real Baroque sort of painting. It's full of heavy Dutch ironmongery, and it's all been beautifully reproduced here. Who knows exactly what it is, but it'll be fantastic when we do get to see what's under there. And you can see, look at this thing with a yellow stone in it just there, and that's tying up to here somehow. And there's just so much going on. I struggle to see how anyone could have painted this whole thing in a lifetime. You can start to see some coloured things coming through there. So basically that thing ties back to the ground, as I mentioned, and if you have a look, you can see some more things on the ground just here, and wherever there's these little indentations, there's something tying back. So what looks like, if you're up close, a bit of a ragged hem, you can see there it has some sort of a jewelled object clamping on, probably to a cable or something. I don't know why I worry about what it is that it's clamping onto. It's all made up painting, but it's just fascinating how much trouble he's gone to, and he's got these clamps and things, and they're all different shapes and types. Like there's something here that's attached to the floor, and you can actually see a chain running straight down the painting, and then it comes to a shackle right down here. I mean, it's just so much work has gone into this. And I suppose, it's an artist putting his stake in the ground, the stake saying this is history, I'll never be forgotten, I guess. It's hard to know what drives an artist to this level of commitment. There's something almost a little bit depressing or sad about it. It seems to have spent so much time and so much effort on something which you're designing so it's actually can't be seen. I guess you're just being clever, I suppose, but it's clever and it's skillful and it's imaginative. So there's a lot going on, but it's there's something vaguely depressing about it, because it's just imagine the hours and hours that were put in by this person, weeks and months and probably years, maybe every spare moment. So you can see that tying up, and you can see there's another one there, and you can see chains running back now, and you can see a chain running down here. You can just pick up a bit of a link there. And there's, the big thing that we looked at in the last episode that sort of sits between the woman and the platform. It could just be just a big anvil or something, like a big heavy metal object. It seems a bit more detailed than that. You can see sort of a hook coming out here as well. So basically, the bottom of this woman's dress, there's a couple of ties going back there. So the bottom of this woman's dress is completely anchored to the ground. She's not going anywhere, and that's what this painting's all about. Now, there's some interesting things to look at, though, further up as well. If we're talking about anchors and restraints, etc. If you have a look at these harpooned type things that we looked at running across the wall, they also run into the dress. And so he's not satisfied with having tied the whole thing to the ground and putting a golden lasso around her ankle. He's absolutely skewered her from the side here. And you'll recall that these run back towards the bottom of the window and then seem to somehow link up to the chair. And there's many of them. But what I wanted to show you is that if you just notice, let's say just pick this one, it's a bit blurry, but you pick this one and or that one, whatever. They come in and you can see it goes into the dress. Now he starts to paint with red paint here, and then it pops out into a bit of an area where you can see it again just here. So, and if you look up there, you can see like a chain or something just there, and it comes down here. So this is where the harpoons actually meet the dress up close. Look at the detail on these. They've actually got little notched rings around them. And this one here, just below the top one, have a look at it. It's got a little pin through it, and it's got. If I zoom too much, it loses focus. But you can see it's actually painted for light and everything as well. I guess beyond me how anyone could have done this. Really, it's almost photographic. It's so extraordinary. So this is the bit I was getting at. It comes through, and this is the first little gap where we can see it. And if you have a look, as that harpoon or that bolt or spear or whatever it is, as it comes through, there's a bolt just here that attaches to it. So she's secured again by something else. And I can see a little bit of silver work just there. And up here, this looks like there's a little bit of a decoration on the dress. Yeah, the dress is interesting because you've got to read it as a normal skirt, but it's got these little spots on it, and I think that they're just indications of it catching light at about her hip. But they've got another function as well, which is really interesting. They actually disguise something that's going on, and it's again to make it difficult to see. When you get to this dark area here, there's bigger shapes. And there's a giant one just here. And I don't know about you, but that looks like bone to me. And I think it's a bone. And I actually think that that's a bone as well. I think what we're looking at is a bit of the woman's pelvis. This is completely wacky, I know. But there's a silver cable that runs up here, and it runs around. And you can see all sorts of detailing on it there, and a bolt through the middle of it. And it comes around and it wraps around something here. It looks like it's wrapping around, I don't know, a hip bone or something. And because you can see that all this is connected, and it's running between these things. And then it comes down here. You can see that there's a bit of a brass or plate or something. And it comes back around. So I think the whole thing is tied up. So she's got a big knot tying up her insides, her pelvis. And so not only is the dress tied down, but it's showing that she's held fast right through to virtually her soul. It's quite extraordinary. I mean, I can't imagine what else it is. This looks like the arc of a pelvic bone to me. It has a bit of a turnover at the top that's very distinctive. A surgeon or someone would know what that is. I don't know whether he's got the anatomy right though. I mean, this looks like it's been sawn through. Maybe he's looked at a person that's been sawn through the middle, or I don't know. perhaps it's something else. Maybe it's a bit of ironwork or something. I don't know, but it certainly that looks very distinctively like a bone to me. And so there's the finish on this, and maybe the red and yellow is designed to help disguise that. The red and yellow, of course, look like quite regal as well from a distance. So, but you can see little bits of metalwork everywhere. There's no matter where you look, you'll see there's metalwork there. There's things poking through every little tiny bit of this. Looks like a cable around her waist, and something else connecting to it. I mean, a lot of these things I'm finding, looking at it in real time, it's not like as if I've been able to find all of these things up front. See this bit of metal that's hanging just here. I don't know whether that's part of the door or whether it's somehow attaching to her. Because again, there's some sort of little latch there and some sort of a tie here. I'm not quite sure why that's red running off in that direction. It's the red seems to run a bit further than the jacket. I'm not quite sure why that is. As we get onto the jacket, you'll again see that there's linkages and ties running from the door. You can see one just there, catching a bit of light. It's running back to the door, and so it's hooking into some object there. You can see a very fine object on the door just there, and a bit of brass that comes down. And I don't know, actually you can see something that sticks up here from the back of the woman. It's some of the things we saw on that door yesterday. Look at this here. It was yesterday for me because I was making that episode, but probably a week ago perhaps for you. So yeah, and that's connecting to something else which is in there. I think if the team of researchers have got about a lifetime, they might be able to work out what's going on here. And just in case you think that this is not painted, that light's just catching something else, and have a look at the detail on this bit of silver thing that runs around what I think is a bit of bone. You can actually see little details painted along it, and what appear to be, I don't know whether they're jewels, but it's textured all the way along. This looks vaguely like a baby, like a child, but I don't think so. Could be. Looks more like a piece of metal, perhaps. Yes, it's a real thought-provoking thing. It's would have been wonderful to have some explanation of what the artist was depicting, rather than having to discover it all by accident. So we'll move across now and have a look at the woman's apron, because that's also quite problematic in terms of the painting. I think this dress is explained now as to what's going on with it, but the woman's apron isn't yet, and we'll just have a look and see whether that somehow ties in. The woman's apron is certainly confusing. It's hard to know whether there actually is an apron. The front of the dress appears to be at this very corner down here, but when you have a look at that closely, you'll see that there's actually a metal shape in front of it, a fan shape, and there's a little pin for it just there. And if you have a look just here, you'll see red jewels and finely detailed jewels all the way through there. So this fan hangs out that way and is jewelled. Whether that in some way relates to this. Boy, this looks like another bone, doesn't it? I don't know. I'm having my own anatomy lesson here. So whether this red part of the fan seems to relate in some way to this silver object. There's this red there. And you can see just faintly the silver object runs down here. There's some of it perhaps on the inside here as well. So anyway, let's not get too bogged down by that. If we go, let's look at what we can work out. On the very first outside apron, we know that this is catching light. So that's real. It's important to the painting that it catches light, and it does. And if you have a look at the top of it, it goes further up onto her jacket, and there seems to be something going up to here and then to there. So somehow this is an apron that connects, I believe, and it hangs down there. And if you just notice at this point, there's a hole in it and another piece ties on, and there's also something that ties it onto the jacket as well. So, and you can see a little fan of material just hanging down there. Just show that to you. It's a little fan of material. And you can see how that goes through there. There's actually something on the other side of it. So somehow this thing comes down and loops around and then ties back against itself. You can see some jewels hidden behind here as well. Then you've got this empty bit in the front. I don't know whether that's some sort of symbolism relating to what she did to her child, but because it does seem to be framed actually, the apron also runs around this way, so maybe this is deliberate. You can see another little knob just there where it's tying, and quite a clear one just there. So it's quite a complex structure. It's not random. It looks like it's just, someone's just splashed a bit of paint on the edge, but it's not random at all. And now the outside of it comes down a bit and changes colour here. There perhaps are some other little ties across, or I'm not really quite sure. I don't know why this bit here seems to stick out. Perhaps there's another tie going up here. Oh, there is something there actually. You see it running up here. So, I don't know, it's the world's most complicated apron by the look of it. So at the outside, the apron comes down and kicks around, and it goes through some sort of a bunching situation just here, where you can see it all bunched up, and then it goes into this area of, you can see an area of light that runs up the painting. Exactly what it is, I'm not sure, but it goes all the way across the boy's tunic, and it starts to get some form just here. And there's a bit of shape to it just there. And then I think someone else has painted this bit over the top, because there's some strange mortar lines been dropped in along these bricks. I think it's just a touch-up that someone's whacked over the top. So this, in some way, is part of the apron as well. It seems to go into the bottom of her sleeve. So yeah, very complicated apron, but I think it is deliberate. It's not just touch-up by someone else. So you can see those mortar lines that I'm talking about that just run straight across this piece of the apron string that runs down. And I don't think they've been put in there by the artist. They've been added in, I think, by someone else. Actually runs right across into the white. It's sort of catching a bit of light, but I think that's the white underneath catching it, and this is just a smear across the top. So you can see a bit of a button there. Let's just have a look at this sleeve while we're here, and her fingers, because we haven't looked at that properly yet. This is where you get the first indication that we've seen of underpainting, the first strong indication. There's a bit on the arch that we've seen, but you can see that this is really quite detailed. There's I don't know whether it's a blouse or something it's just poking out the bottom of her sleeve and running around in a bit of a pattern. Now, her arm and hand are unusual. Not that anything else on this painting is not unusual, but you can see a fan shape at the top there. I'm wondering whether this, and you see a little button just where the thumb of this little hand is. I'm wondering whether this is actually a sleeve covering, an arm covering that's attached to her, the end of her jacket, or a blouse underneath. You can actually see where the blouse runs around there, and there's some other little lumps, and so they could actually be buttoned on, I think. Because the other thing that suggests that as well is when you come down here, you can see that there's a large ring on her finger. I think that's her second finger. Her forefinger runs down around the edge of the apple, and I think this is on the next finger. So I'm thinking that might be something that helps connect this red sleeve covering. This is a bit of a misdirect. This brown bit here, it looks from a distance like it's a little finger, but I don't believe it's anything to do with a finger. A finger's end back about here somewhere, and they are possibly either behind an object that runs down and connects to the basket, or there's just a piece of an object that connects to the basket and runs under her arm and over to the boy, or it's running up and connecting here somehow. You can see there's a little bit of detail on her hand as well, just there. So this would be about the line of her knuckles. There might be a bit of a little finger there, but I don't think so. I think that's the little finger just tucking in behind. You can see a nail there. Yeah, I think the finger bends under, but it's pretty hard to see. I mean, these fingers would only be a millimetre wide, so it's unsurprising that he's having a little bit of difficulty giving us the detail. It's a beautiful apple, though. Looks like a golden delicious. It's a yellow coloured apple. It's got spots on it. The other apples are not very well defined, and again, I don't know whether there's been some touching up done in the back here. And the boy's other hand is not well defined at all. It seems, well, you just see a sort of a white lump if that's his hand, but I don't even know whether that is his hand. The artist has gone to some considerable detail when we get to the boy to actually support this basket. Point out this little bit here while we're on this photograph. You can see that there's ironwork underneath the basket, somehow connecting to his tunic. It's got a little bracket that sticks out, and you'll see when we get to the rest of the boy that he's got a lot of details just relating to the support of this basket. So you do wonder whether he does have an injury of some sort. We'll have a bit further look at the black jacket. There's not as much to see on it because it's very hard to see the details, but you can pick up areas of detailed painting here and there. But I want to particularly show you these little marks on the back that look a bit like buttons. Now, I think these are buttons or decorations on the jacket of some sort, because they appear in a number of parts of the painting. There was one on the chair that we looked at, which was a shinier silver one, and I'll show you one in her hair, and there's a couple of these sort of shapes on the door, and I think what they are is a silver filigree painted, and then he's actually deposited some rocks into it. It's like a mixed media part of the painting. I don't think these little stones are painted because there's a bit of a stone graveyard down on the floor, which I didn't show you, but it's like a little area of where a whole lot of these little rocks have been gathered together, and I just wonder whether he's put the paint in and then placed these, because just in case you think it's not painted, if you just let your eye adjust a bit, you'll just see an edge here of metal, and it runs around and it comes up and it does start to go around this object. So I don't think it's an accidental object. I think this is painted, and the one up the top will be a bit clearer for you to see. There's also something just over here, which again you can see a little black knob through it. Look how big the cracks are. I'll give you an idea of how small this is. It's probably, 1.5 millimetres or something like that. It's absolutely minuscule. See, this one over here looks a bit like a tree, doesn't it? You can see that piece of the stem. It's even got a little red thing on it. And it's got coloured stones. I mean, it does seem to have been assembled to me. the chances of that just being, where the cat has walked or something, I don't think that's plausible. Here's a better one here. You can actually see the detailing in the centre of it. So you can see the silver paint. So this is an interesting one, because you can actually, if we have a look at this little silver stem that's going into it, you'll see there's a little ring just where my thumb is. You'll see a little ring coming off it, and you'll see it fits into a sleeve. Again, just where the thumb is now, and then it comes along to enter into the actual jewel itself. So this is some sort of little armature, I think. That bit there is just a bit of dust, I suspect, but this is actually something that looks very real. So yeah, you can get an idea of all the detailing up here on this one. This is quite incredible. You see the little silver, little black round thing with a silver frame around it, and you can see where the jewels or whatever are in shadow, and he's just left them in a darker colour, more of a sort of a monochrome. Really quite amazing. Now in this painting you have to be particularly suspicious of shadows, because that's where he tends to hide things. So you see that the woman's back of her jacket just comes along here, and just where it meets this shadow coming down the edge of the door jamb, if you look closely you'll see that there's something sticks out of her back just here, a little plate of some sort, and that plate actually connects up here. So the whole thing is integrated, but he particularly likes to hide things in shadow areas. You can see another little jewel here, and it's on a bit of silver that runs back towards her hair, but as it goes across her collar, you can see it runs along the edge of another silver object, and you can see that just there. And there's a little chain or something just running off the edge of it. Where that goes, I'm not quite sure, but quite interesting. There's two sort of linked jewels there, so it's a little bit different again. The back of her collar, this looks like quite a bit of detailing here. You can see little jewels and things hidden in amongst what's an incredibly detailed collar. And along the edge here it looks like there's some smoky colour, which I suspect is a bit of lace of some sort. So I think we'll move up into her face and hair now, and there's an awful lot to be seen there. Now firstly, just in terms of orientation, her face from her hairline to where the jacket starts is about 30 millimetres, so it's about 1.2 inches. And from her forehead right across to the back of her hair is about 35 millimetres. So I don't know, what's that, about 1.4 inches or something. It's just slightly bigger than the length. Now, the things to notice about her face is that if you look at it from a distance, you can't see any of these sort of strange details. And when you look at it up close, nothing really integrates. Let's just go back and let's just go back and have a quick look at what it looks like from a distance. So what you see is the woman's face with just a slightly darkened edge along it. You see a little bit of light on her cheek. You see shadow as it heads towards her hair. You can see her eye picked out pretty clearly. Her nose is there reasonably clearly. You can see her lips, and just a little bit of shadow down the front edge of her face as well. And obviously the hair is all fairly soft on the edge, but there's nothing that looks like it's anything unusual about that part of the painting. Perhaps a little bit of light just picking up along there, but nothing much else. But when we get up close to the face, we can actually start to see how it's been created. He's got quite thick paint for the cheek, for the pink of the cheek, but as he goes off towards the back of her hair, how he creates the shadow is by thinning the paint as it goes across. Now there's an undercolour on this whole face of green. This green underneath the eye that's quite clearly seen, and he just uses that as the definition for the eye. But he just thins the paint in this area. When he gets towards the edge of it, he contours the colour. You can see that it's just separated by lines. You wouldn't realise that up close, but that actually just creates that dark edge that you can see and gives the nose and the mouth definition. Then the underpainting of the nose is just this reddish brown colour. It's just a blob of paint, but it doesn't show like that from a distance. I'm assuming this is paint put here by the artist, but it's certainly all these marks blend together extremely well when you're at a distance. You can see what looks like quite a complicated eyebrow sticking out there. There's these lumps and bumps along the front edge here of her forehead. They could be deliberate, but I suspect you can see a bit of a line just there. I suspect there might be something going on deep down in the paint layer of this creamy white colour. There might be a few eruptions going on, because some of these colours are known to change some chemical composition and start to create, I think it's lead soaps, that you start to get some sort of swelling of certain areas. So it's possibly something like that. It could be deliberate. I wouldn't have thought so, though. Now you can start to pick up a little bit of a detail in the back of her hair here. There's a bit of a coral jewel and a black stone with a silver edge around it. And you can see a band running across here, and there seems to be some jewels down the bottom here. So let's just have a bit of a look what they are. So as with everything else, her hair's got incredibly fine detail. If we start from the back again, you can see some black and silver jewels running down here. That's that black stone that has some silver around it, the coral colour. There seem to be coral from memory used in a couple of Vermeer paintings in the hair as some sort of a highlight, so seems to have perhaps been a favourite of his. But you can see silver running down here with pearls or something in it, and then you've got this band of running across towards the front of her head, and it runs there as the bottom and there's the top of it. Okay, so, and when it gets to the front, there's this incredible little hook here which I really like. At times it's looked like a crocodile or an alligator eating its own tail, but anyway, you can see it's a little clip. It's absolutely minuscule. Would it perhaps be a millimetre maybe? You see it's got a red stone on it and a silver framework there, and little filigreed silver chain that goes across to this yellow stone. And what it connects into is really interesting. It connects into what looks to me like a piece of bone. Whalebone used to be used for, I don't know whether it was used in hair objects, but it certainly was used in other things. But then just let your eyes adjust just a little bit, and you can see some really fine detailing here. And just while we're here, I'll just point out this little gossamer leaf. Just have a look at that. It's actually painted. It's painted on something which is thinner than a crack in a painting. So this whole thing, this whole hair-looking thing, is painted. And the little branch that comes off has a leaf on it. I think it's got another leaf there. So this hangs down from the woman's head from memory. Now, before I got distracted by the gossamer leaf, I was going to get you to look up this area along here, just on the edge of her face. And what you start to come into is another area of detail. Let's go back a little bit because it'll make it clearer. See this fine painting just here? It's got silver. It's all sort of silver filigree. So if that's about a millimetre, this is even smaller. And you can see as it runs up here, we start to see some other detail coming in just here and here. See there? And there. And see how these things start to look like columns? Look at that there. It's got a round top on it. It looks like a temple. It's like this woman's got a temple in her hair. Just on that bit there. And now we get to the main event, which is she's wearing a tiara or a diadem, and it sits down fairly low on her forehead, just so you don't see the edges of it, and it comes up along here, and it has a bit of structure to it. And it's black and silver, so you can barely pick out the edges, but it's got these incredible silver spikes that come up, and each one of them is decorated differently. And this one has sort of a checkerboard pattern. And this one's got something at the top that's a particular shape, and another one's got another shape there. There's a little bit that sticks out over here, and you've got this one right up in the middle that seems to catch some light. So just amazing little tiara that she's wearing. So there's no doubt that this woman is Juno, the Queen of Heaven, painted in absolutely exquisite detail. There's one of those silver objects in her hair that I was going to point out to you. I'll come down, let's get it back a little bit so that we can keep it in focus. It's got a little armature just there, and you can see it's just got a couple of little items on it, and you can actually pick up the way the silver in that area, just look at that bottom area there, you can pick up the way it's been shaped around. This object here looks like a pear with some sort of spiral thing around it. There's a large coloured, looks like a ribbon in her hair up here. I don't know whether it's something that, there's something more to it. It seems to have some decoration along this edge, doesn't it? So there's all sorts of objects in her hair. But what we're interested in is what on earth it is that's catching the light on this edge, so that it puts these coloured marks that we had a look at quite some time ago now. These wonderful marks that are absolutely graduated like light, so that at the very top they're painted white, so that it appears that they're just catching the light. So there's something going on under this area of the painting that's directing light on this. I guess it could be catching off the object sticking up in her hair. There's a large silver thing there, and there's more silver coming around this edge. Obviously there's a lot of silver and bits and pieces there. Let's see if I can get a photo that gives us a bit of a better indication that something down there. If you look into the gloom, you can see a few shapes, and it's a bit of a disc there. I don't know what that is, and possibly another object just there. What you can see around the edge of her head is that he hasn't actually painted right up to the edge. He's left this green underpaint as a sort of a clear margin there, and there's just a little bit of brown underpaint in this area where it obviously has slightly warmer tones. Looks like her hair has brown under it, apart from in the back here where there's shadow. So the face has green under it though, so he's someone who knew exactly what his intentions were when he was doing the underpainting, to work out what he was going to paint over the top. It was obviously just completely well understood by him, or planned, or whatever. You can get an idea of some of those little jewels there. But if you just have a look around the edge of the hair, there's just a bit of margin of unpainted, or it certainly doesn't have the wall colour just along this very edge. And that has the effect of softening up the edge a lot. It looks like it just fades off into the wall. This little top knot's interesting because that's all jewelled as well. A bit hard to see, but there's actually a little bit here that sticks up and relates to it. But that's also got decorations all around it, and it's very tiny. And you can see something there that's just like a random bit of jewellery. It's like a silver stem with a little brown ball on it. Might have been displaced from the edge of her hair, but this does bring about my suspicions that perhaps some of this was dealt with at night time, because it would be so easy just to lose track of random objects. If you were only lighting a very small area of something and something fell outside of your view, it would be very easy to lose track of it. And there's lots of random objects all over this, and I just wonder if they're deliberate, or whether the artist has just lost track of where something went to. So I don't think any of us are ever going to see another painting that's quite as strange and wonderful as this one is. It's incredibly innovative, and it's technically superb, and it's full of mysteries and puzzles. So it really has everything you'd ever want in a painting. It's the sort of painting that I imagine the artist took a lot of pleasure in showing to his circle. I imagine it was quite a famous painting in its time, and yet somehow it's slipped beneath the waves and we've lost track of it. It is interesting, though, that one of the names that de Hoogh's painting was known by was a boy bringing apples, but quite clearly there's no apples in the basket in de Hoogh's painting, and I wonder if these paintings got mixed up at some stage, because I'm absolutely certain that the two artists were somehow in contact with each other. This is a very old painting, and whether it's a copy of de Hoogh's scheme remains to be seen. I suspect it's not. I suspect this predates the de Hoogh painting, and I think it probably dates from somewhere in the second half of the 1650s. But we'll learn a little bit more about that when we have a look at the boy in the next episode, and that will be the final episode in this series. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's certainly been a strange one, and I hope you come back next week for the next episode. Thanks very much for watching.